Hello, my name is Cindy Stolp, and I completed my research on emotions and educators implementing a social emotional framework in early childhood. Here's a little snapshot of my background. I started my career as a preschool teacher, parent educator, family educator, and moved into being an administrator for early childhood. My last piece to my educational puzzle was completed in 2022 by completing my doctorate. And recently I was promoted to superintendent for Pine City Schools. I believe every minute I spent on learning was worth the investment. Now back to my early childhood years. Early childhood is often deemed the great equalizer. It's able to set the foundation for closing the achievement gap in the K-12 world. Why? It's an optimal time for intervention. There's rapid brain growth. Longitudinal studies dating back to 1962 indicate some significant outcomes. Even on the financial side, a 13% return on investment, lower special ed costs, intervention costs, expulsion, higher rates of graduation. However, as a political hot topic, there have been mixed academic results causing some concerns. My research revolves around potential barriers to high quality early childhood programming. The problem: high expulsion rates are creating barriers to attending the learning opportunities. 20% of the preschoolers are demonstrating chronic challenging behaviors. In 2016, 50,000 preschoolers were suspended across the nation. However, in early childhood, we say this probably isn't a good fit for your program versus you're expelled. 2018 research indicated that the ineffective discipline cycle probably starts with an emotional shift in educator. So here's my problem. Whether it's typical or atypical behavior, little ones are just learning how to be social beings. Teachers in early childhood are often not required to have a teaching license or training. With limited support and limited training, it creates gaps in strategies. The limited financial resources equal lower wages in preschool and contribute to high rates of turnover. With the increased pressure to change the landscape and foundation of education, it's a perfect recipe for frustration, inappropriate discipline, suspension, and expulsion. While there is no magic framework, the pyramid model is based on the PBIS framework in the K-12 world. The pyramid model has demonstrated successful outcomes by reducing challenging behaviors by creating an effective workforce. Based on the diffusion of innovation, a new framework either is diffused into a system or abandoned. Based on a PBIS framework study, after year one, 34% of teams actually abandon the implementation. And after 5 years of implementing, only 42% of teams are successfully implementing the framework to fidelity. Why does this matter? We need to learn how to support our early childhood educators. My focus is on emotions. We also need to understand that emotions are contagious. My study was a qualitative study. What I wanted to learn were, what were the emotions in adults related to the framework? And what were the emotions and the stress related to the system-wide policies and procedures? I conducted interviews, and the interviews lasted from 8 minutes to 58 minutes. If I were to do this again, I would do a focus group because people could feed off of each other's ideas and memories and reflect on that. My time frame due to COVID and cancellations was 7 weeks. I learned emotions ranged from intense, happy and excited emotions. They were so happy to connect with others and try and implement a support system that was going to change their chronic behaviors. Those feelings quickly moved into unpleasant feelings when they discovered that this is not what they signed up for. This is going to be a lot of work, and this was not what was in the brochure. These feelings often moved into unpleasant feelings of sadness and depression. I don't understand what I'm doing. I can't figure this out. What's the point? And for teams that actually made it to the end of the implementation, and felt like they were implementing to fidelity, there was a sense of relief. Ah, I got this. I know what we're doing. We're not going to be perfect, but we can figure this out together. Uses the stages of learning, emotions emerged in predictable patterns. I'm going to focus on the conscious incompetence. Here were a lot of patterns, emotional patterns of sadness, frustration, and uncomfortable feelings. When educators realized they were missing skills, their peers were catching on faster than they did, and they had a lot of work to do. They were making a lot of mistakes. They were feeling weak and demoralized and lost confidence, and they wanted to quit. Here's where the leaders really need to step in and support their people. They need to pull them through the negative feelings. What I noticed is when teams got stuck in the negative emotions, the sad turned to depressed. They stated they felt like they were living in Groundhog's Day of negative emotions. However, in teams that felt like they were successful, they did go through these growing phases, but they knew it was only temporary. Another system level barrier I'd like to point out is coaching. There was a lot of frustration with coaching. The team said, we had different interpretations of what coaching was supposed to look like. I didn't know what it meant to be a coach. Am I supposed to coach them? There were a lot of overwhelming feelings. You want me to start coaching, but I don't know how to be a coach? Research does indicate that coaching makes an impact and increases the likelihood of sustaining them in implementation. If there's frustration with coaching, it is likely that there's a lack of a coaching plan. Leadership was also another significant barrier. Teams stated things that indicated that the leaders set the directions and the relationships, and they develop practices. They focus, they improve instruction and align resources. One team stated, if there isn't a dedicated leader, there's uncertainty. Things just don't move fast. One team indicated they had 4 administrators in 4 years, starting over and over and over again. It's really important to note there is an ambiguity in power in early childhood. There are often unlicensed coordinators overseeing the program versus a licensed administrator. One day you're a peer and the next day you're a coordinator. You want to be a teacher, but you had to be a coordinator, and you didn't go to school to be a leader and an administrator. Often the teachers were saying they didn't acknowledge my direction, my feedback, or my recommendation. For the leaders of the school system, you need to look into the leadership structure of your early childhood programs. Do they have the support they need? Early childhood is very important. So my thoughts to you are grab a cup of coffee and get your dissertation done. You can feel free to call me or email me anytime, Cindy Stolp, and I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.